One Habs insider has a new report that indicates Kent Hughes could be closely watching the LA Kings situation after their backup goalie is now out for the season and why Jake Allen might be on the move to LA. We'll be talking about that, plus a defenseman in the Habs system has asked for a trade and why that could spell disaster for the Habs NHL decor moving forward. We're going to be talking about all of that on this episode of Habs Digest. But guys, before we get into the video, a quick shout out to Drew Deeks, and we did a video with him today on his channel. Go check it out. We had an awesome time. So if you guys like us, if you guys like Drew Deeks, go give him some love, subscribe to his channel, and check out the video we did together. I think you'll really enjoy it. Jesse, it's time to get into the video. We got to talk first a bit about Arpon Basu and his recent article. Well, not article, it's the NHL article where he does the section for the Habs. Hey, that's kind of what he always does, but he believes the Habs might make a push. And if we take a read here, he said he's changed his stance slightly because of how well the Habs did on their annual holiday trip. And yes, doing 500 is doing well based on the recent history of that holiday trip. But he said the Habs were able to climb their way into the fringes of the playoff race. And if that's the case, it's possible management might approach the deadline with some caution. But the likely scenario still remains a hard sell. I know, Jesse, you've been very much saying, hey, the Habs can make a playoff push for a long time. Do you think that the Habs' current position will affect them at the deadline? We'll get into some potential deadline moves soon, but I mean, I think it's starting to maybe look like they might be looking to make some more like winning culture type moves as opposed to just pure selling.
It's definitely going to be a balancing act, right? Because you want to encourage, them being competitive right now and kind of give them the tools they need. By no means do I think Kent is going to try and make a trade to try and get us into the playoffs, but does that kind of affect his kind of approach, right? Because for sure that playoff experience is great, but you don't want to do a fire sale if you feel like you have a chance. You want to reward if the team's working so hard to get there. So I feel like the last thing you want to do is just kind of eliminate that, because this team has been battling for a playoff spot from the beginning of the year. They know they're rebuilding, but the goal is still to get a playoff. So we can kind of rebuild and have young guys and still kind of organically do it, right? But where the team is going to be at is really going to determine this. And you have to feel like they're going to be in a dogfight really right all the way to the end, and there's so much good development that can come from being in the playoffs. But of course, it's all about the long-term vision as well. But at the same time, you want to encourage that winning play, because there's so many teams kind of behind us that even though we're not doing perfect right now, they wish that they had our record right now. Mm-hmm. They wish that they were in the position we were in. So that's something really not to take for granted.
Yeah, the Habs are beating top teams in the NHL. They beat the Jets this year. They had amazing showings against Boston and Vegas, and they just beat the New York Rangers, the top team in the East. It's like they've done a lot of good things. And while, like you said, by no means do we think Kent Hughes is about to go out there and try and make a win-now move to make a playoff push. No, I don't think that's in the cards at all. However, the odds of him maybe making a move that can solidify the team at least for a few years as we, again, sort of transition out of this rebuild, as opposed to just selling for future assets, you start to wonder, is this team kind of ahead of where even they thought they might be? So there's a lot of interesting questions there. Again, don't think they're going to go making a crazy move right away, but it's an interesting scenario nonetheless. But let's move on to our second topic, and it actually does involve a Habs defenseman who is not very happy, and that is Nicolas Baudin. And you guys know who Nicolas Baudin is? Well, he was a former first-round pick by the Chicago Blackhawks, acquired by Montreal not that long ago, and let's show you some of his stuff. So Nicolas Baudin, he said he wants a chance to play more, and right now in Laval, Logan Mailloux, Arber, Xhekaj, William Trudeau, they all have bigger offensive roles than him. But Nicolas Baudin, he's kind of an offensive defenseman, picked 27th overall. He's 24 years old now. He's had some really good seasons, 25 points in 39 games last year for Laval. He even had a 6-point 19-game stint with the Chicago Blackhawks in 2020-2021. But he's looking to get out. And Jesse, I know you mentioned before the show, I'll let you take this, but this might just be the start of something in the Habs organization. If someone in Laval's already asking out because of the depth ahead of them, what might happen with the Habs?
Well, that's exactly it. That's the beginning of this issue right now, is when are we going to have somebody in the NHL that's kind of asking the same question, that really wants that time? We know Xhekaj very well could be in the NHL right now if it weren't for how many great defensive prospects we have showing up. You have to feel like even somebody like Gustav Lindstrom, he wants to be in an NHL lineup, right? So this is where it's kind of starting to happen. We see at the AHL guy where we have more offensive defensemen ahead of him, and kind of rightfully so. He's fair to ask this question, but at a certain point, even with our guys in the NHL, they're going to start asking some of those questions too. So you have to feel like as the trade deadline approaches, if Kent Hughes is going to be doing a move, which obviously I expect we do, I do expect for a defenseman to be traded just because I feel like that's more of a position of need. We need to not only fill up, free up some spots at the NHL level, but also therefore as a result at the AHL level as well. So, candidates for this, I see very much Kovacevic in a lot of ways. Savard, he brings a lot of experience, as well, which is valuable. We don't want to just have the young guys. So I see Kovacevic in a lot of ways being a little bit less of a necessity, obviously not getting as much of a return, but you have to feel like those questions are going to be answered really quick. Teams are really starting to get in a playoff mode. The competition's ramping up. So teams are going to be looking at ways to solidify their decor.
Yeah, and they're going to look at a team like Montreal and they're like, well, look, Montreal has a lot of great defensive prospects. They have Logan Mailloux, who still needs to work on his defensive game and discipline, but it's been really, really good offensively for the value. You have a guy like Arber Xhekaj, who's already proven in the NHL to some degree. You got Reinbacher coming in, you got Lane Hutson, and then you still have the backlog. Chris Weidman's still on this team. I don't think he'll play another game, but you never know. He's still there. Jonathan Kovacevic, Justin Barron, Cayden, Guhle. There's Jordan Harris and Jaden Struble, and Struble now even is playing more minutes than Guhle in their last game. There's just a lot of confusion going on as to who's going to be the guy. And these questions, we've talked about this for ages, but at some point it's got to be answered. Hopefully we'll see some at this trade deadline, if not this offseason, because Hudson might even be on the roster by the end of the season. If not in Montreal, at least in the AHL, and just kind of compounds the problem. So there's a lot to keep an eye on for sure. But maybe more pressing than that, Jesse, is kind of the trade deadline moves the Habs are looking to make maybe sooner than a defenseman move, and that's Jake Allen. And we got a little report here to talk about that shows that Kent Hughes might be keeping an eye on the LA Kings. And if you guys weren't aware, the LA Kings have recently had their backup goalie, Phoenix Copley, be out for the season after surgery. And as Marc-Olivier Baudouin from BPM Spa mentions, he said the goalie watch is still going now that Phoenix Copley is not going to be back this season for the Kings. And he's convinced that Kent Hughes is looking at this situation, thinking like, could we maybe move Jake Allen or Kaiden Primeau? Could these discussions come back? And if we take a look at the LA Kings goaltending situation, I mean, right now, David Rittich is their backup. Big save Dave. He was a former Leaf, former Predator, former Calgary Flame. But he's not the pinnacle of consistency at the backup goalie position, and you can expect those numbers in that 3-game sample size to definitely go down a bit. So you think this team like LA, Jesse, I mean, when I look at them, they manhandled the Montreal Canadiens basically this year. But they're a team that looks poised to make a big playoff push. And I think goaltending stability, when you have Talbot and you have David Rittich, I think stability in net is something that you really value. And I really, truly think that if they can make the finances work somehow, that Jake Allen could be a really good get for them.
Yeah, why haven't the Kings even made this move yet? It seems like they have all the tools. Like Jake Allen would help their team tremendously. It seems like the asking price is the only difference. It says, we don't want a 6th-round draft pick for Jake Allen. We want a 4th-round draft pick at the least. Yeah. I think Kent Hughes is going to hold out for a little bit more, and rightfully so, though, right? It's like, we know it's teams are really gearing up right now, right? We're getting to that playoff time, and Kent Hughes knows he's so smart to just kind of way back, that there's so many teams that need a goalie right now. And obviously so many teams are kind of battling out kind of in that playoff picture. He's totally in his rights by just kind of being patient and knowing that he's going to get that proper sort of return back. Like, in your opinion, Josh, are you trading Jake Allen for a 2nd-round draft pick?
A 2nd rounder, I think I'd strongly consider that. Yeah, I mean, like, considering what goalies have gone for in recent years, right? And even this year, like, you see guys like Samsonov, who has a decently proven track record, albeit inconsistent, and a guy like Eric Comrie. These guys with not like massive cap hits less than Jake Allen, pass through waivers. If the Habs get offered something like that, I think you got to strongly consider it. And honestly, in my mind, I think that's what Kent Hughes has in mind too, because it's been very clear, like we've seen, he's sticking to his guns. He's not going to settle for a crappy offer that another team's going to send him. And I think he wants something. And I think he wants even a decent usable prospect, if not a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick. But the question that comes back, Jesse, like, do you think any team is willing to give up a 2nd-round pick for Allen? Do you think as we get closer to the deadline, maybe if Dave Rittich has a couple bad starts, Cam Talbot maybe tweaks something, like it might pressure the Kings, or if not them, another team to make a move? And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for a team to overpay for Jake Allen when, again, like we said, some other goalies have passed through waivers. And in the past, goalies maybe of Allen's caliber or slightly less have really not gone for much.
No, honestly, I think that, the longer we wait, that basically time is just on our side once it comes to this. We're seeing right now that, Montembeault and that Primeau can really be a good combination for us. So you have to feel like even for Jake Allen, that, Kent Hughes is going to want to do right to him. And obviously you have to feel that Allen at this point in his career would be so happy going to a contender, be it, the Kings, the Hurricanes. Obviously, I'd be much happier seeing him go to a Western Conference team than here we know the Toronto Maple Leafs are ever looking for a goaltender as well. I definitely do not want to see Jake Allen there, by any means whatsoever, right? But he adds a lot of value to this team. So to be honest, I'm okay with holding out till we kind of get the right sort of trade. And again, if he needs to kind of package that to kind of do that, I think he's right. But I think, like many other Habs fans, I am excited to maybe get to see Cayden Primeau get a little bit more run. Like, again, we can't take for granted his development, that he's just even the conversation where you and I are both kind of happy potentially having him as the backup goalie for the Montreal Canadiens. The fact that he's been able to turn this corner and play really well and kind of offer this liberties where we can get another draft pick in the near future. Maybe he's looking more for a prospect now. I feel like Kent Hughes, he's kind of with the rebuild. It started with the draft picks. Then, okay, to fit our timeline, more of the prospects. I think we're still looking to get a couple more of the prospects that we're at. And then once we fill that out, we're almost going to have too many of that. We're just going to need to get some roster guys, right? Because we do have so many right now as it is. So, I think either a prospect or a roster player for Jake Allen would be great for us.
I think Kent Hughes, his master plan is that he wants to accumulate as many assets as possible so that he can make some big splashes in trades. Clearly, that's something he's willing to do. Did it for Newhook, did it for Dach, and I think he could have something even bigger in store, especially if he keeps racking up the draft picks, racking up the prospects. They have too many now. It's just in due time, they're going to get shipped off for something big. So I'm super excited for Kent Hughes, super excited for a lot of trade news. Obviously, I'm not excited that Allen might be leaving. Love Jake Allen, but hey, if the return is good, you got to do what you got to do. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We passed 10,000. We really appreciate all you people. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button, you're still watching now, do it now. We'd really appreciate it. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.